Hello. This is our first episode of the podcast. Scratch that. I'm just kidding. We took a little bit of a hiatus, but welcome back, everybody. This is episode 58. We are going to be discussing the future now that the season's concluded, and we're starting to get news about franchise tags and free agency and
Mhm.
combine information. So, Corstian and I decided we're just going to focus on the quarterbacks in this episode because there's a lot of discussion on quarterbacks. Whether it's like movement throughout the league, free agency. Um, the draft is loaded with quarterbacks, so
Mhm.
we're going to be
Yeah.
doing a little bit of a discussion on that. But
Mhm.
before we get into it, Korshan, how are you doing? And how did you take advantage of the 2 week break we got?
Um, I don't know. Honestly, I've been really busy. Um, one of my classes is a little startup thing that we're doing on campus, and so been doing a lot of work there. But it's I'm still keeping up, trying to keep up with football stuff. It's been fun to kind of get into free agency. Somehow free agency and like the draft is like one of my favorite parts of football, like more so than even like watching games sometimes I feel. Um, so we're kind of entering like the part of the season that I'm actually really excited for. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And those dopamine hits when you see like the new free agency moves or like
Hmm.
franchise tags or like trades that go on, like I hear you. When the Bears were able to snag DJ Moore from Carolina
Hmm.
last year, I was so happy. And the amount of offseason movement that happened, we were getting excited about Darren Waller. I was getting excited about DJ Moore. Um, all those little moves that happen, it just gives everybody some hope for the season before the season starts. Like all 32 teams are in it suddenly, and it doesn't
Hmm.
doesn't feel like Kansas City went back to back in this part of the year because
Hmm.
every team is in it. Every team is trying to be as good as Kansas City, and that's what it is. First topic of the day is this has been like a question that has divided the Chicago fan base, people like across the league, because this situation impacts the entire quarterback market, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And we're gonna address it here. If Justin Fields gets traded from Chicago, which teams does he get traded to?
Hmm. Good question. Um, let's see. So where did my list go? Here we go. Yeah, I mean I think everybody like on social media and stuff is like kind of saying every quarterback on the carousel goes to Atlanta because I feel like it's just like a really lucrative spot to like want to be, and um I think it's easy to like go with the flow and say the Falcons as well. Um because I think the Falcons, they're wanting to build a dynasty. They got a young core, and so adding a young quarterback to the mix that has a couple years under his belt already, and if they think that they have a team that can really get him to that next level, I think that'd be smart. But like I'm looking at like the kind of the other teams just kind of off the top of my head that look like they may want. Um, yeah, and I don't know. Just I guess it really depends on how much the Bears are asking for in compensation. What do you think the Bears should be asking for Justin Fields?
I think they should try to target a future first round pick.
Hmm.
That's going to be overpay for the team that does commit to do that. But for the
Hmm.
Bears, I would do that for multiple reasons. One, there's more than one team that needs a quarterback on the level of Justin Fields. So you already have interest, right? And number two, most teams are going to fetch a third and a second round pick. If you're looking at teams like the Falcons, the Steelers have been thrown around, the Raiders have been thrown around because they
Yeah,
just hired Luke
Steelers.
Getzey as offensive coordinator. They're gonna and New England has been like a hot topic of conversation because like they're right up there in the draft order. Like they seem like the most logical team to go up and trade for Caleb Williams, and the Bears to trade down and not lose that much of value from first overall to fourth overall.
Hmm.
Not saying it's going to happen. They're going to swap first round picks, but you would think that scenario would pop up if the Bears were to trade down or like trade Justin Fields, something of
Mhm.
that nature. Um,
Mhm.
I I'm like on the fence on this where I don't think it's gonna be a third round pick. I more think it's gonna be a second round pick or higher
Mhm.
because all those teams duking it out is gonna raise the bar
Mhm.
because Ryan Poles could easily go to the Raiders and be like, hey, New England's willing to fetch me their first round pick. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna give me Max Cosby and like a
Mhm.
fifth round pick or something like that? Because if so, I'll do the deal or something like that. I'm just throwing out examples. I'm not even trying to compare Cosby and a fifth round pick to Justin Fields. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, but something at that sort where I would get a future first round pick or a trade down scenario and a player, maybe not to the level of DJ Moore, but like something approximate to that.
Mhm.
I don't think it's going to be as high, but so like I'm torn between that and then also thinking it's not going to be as high as people think. I don't think we're going to see a DJ Moore like type trade reward because I think a lot of teams are going to be scared of giving up the amount that Carolina did last year. Because now look at Carolina's situation. They fired their coach after just hiring them last season, fired their GM. They're going on like new look Lions from the ground up right now without a first round pick to start that build. So they're in a rough spot this year. I don't think teams are ready to like throw away their draft picks for a chance at Fields and try and steady their quarterback situation. So um,
Mhm.
I'm gonna say in my long answer that expect to see a second round pick or a significant player of need that the Bears need
Mhm.
that the Bears want to have. So like
Mhm.
um, let's say from Pittsburgh, for example, I think they could use a guy like Deontay Johnson or George Pickens or something of that nature that hurts the
Mhm.
Pittsburgh Steelers or like a Alex Highsmith because they're trying to build the best pass rush in the league. Or like
Mhm.
maybe you could see a deal revolved around Minka and then like the Bears would part away with like number 9 and Justin Fields for Minka and like a second round pick or something like that.
Mhm.
Just throwing trade ideas here. So that's the kind of deals I think they're trying to like level against the teams, like definitely sending offers. Like they're definitely having conversations about it. I don't think it's an easy foregone conclusion, but I would say second round pick or player of need.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I think at minimum, Bears are going to be asking a second round pick, and so I think that's kind of like the baseline, and then it goes up from there, like kind of like you're talking about there. But yeah, I think it's a tricky situation just because you got to look at the draft and think that like one of these guys that you're basically taking a guess on is going to be better than what you have with Justin Fields. Um,
And define
and like
well, define better. What do you mean? What do you mean by? Are you talking about performance? Are you talking about effect on the locker room? What do you mean by better?
winning games,
Okay,
performance, I guess.
okay, okay. That's fair. That's fair because Justin Fields for like the amount of team building he has and the amount he means to the Chicago, like has not won that many games, like in a start, for better or
Hmm.
for worse. I'm one of those
Yeah.
guys that thinks it's way more nuanced, where
Hmm.
there hasn't been enough around him and the coaching hasn't been
Hmm.
ideal to make that
Hmm.
statement where it's like, okay, Justin Fields has not won us enough games. I think it's more like the team has not been talented enough to win those
Hmm.
games because or like
Yeah.
coach to handle those situations. Because I could argue the Bears have a 9 or 10 win season
Hmm.
this year if they win 2 out of the 3 games they lost in the last minute,
Hmm.
basically.
Yeah.
So when I look at that, I'm under the case where like I would not move on from Fields. I would try to continue building around him because that's the
Hmm.
fastest way you're going to get sustained success by having a nucleus
Hmm.
around him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a tricky situation, like you mentioned.
Hmm.
Um, what other teams do you think would be interested? I know we've thrown
Um.
Falcons, Steelers, Raiders out there.
Yeah. Um. I think like What's interesting though, yeah, is like there's been a decent amount of like coaching movement as well. And so that's what kind of makes it tricky, I think, to predict where exactly people like are going, especially like because I look at the Patriots and I'm like, you got a first time, head coach there, and we really don't know about his like. I mean, you have like an offensive coordinator, but like obviously, like what's like kind of the whole like what's the philosophy of the team there with the Patriots now that Belichick's gone, and like it'll be interesting to kind of see who they go after. I think they could be a kind of a potential sleeper candidate in like the runnings if they do go after Justin Fields, but also the Patriots have a high enough pick that like I think they'll just try to draft their guy. I mean, Caleb Williams, I feel like is out of the picture because just they're still not high enough for that. But I think outside of that, if their guy is somewhere else in the draft, they have a decent shot at getting him. And so I think that's what the Patriots like. I'm kind of going into the rookies now, but um, but yeah, I think Patriots are kind of like a wild card in terms of which quarterback they get. Uh, I think the most, yeah, actually, because yeah, so I think Patriots might be in the running. It's a kind of long-winded way of talking about it, but
I mean, there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of nuance to
Mhm,
it. Like, I wouldn't. There's a lot of teams out there where you're like, okay, do they have a quarterback? No.
mhm,
Insert Justin Fields trade interest to that team. And I think when you talk about quarterbacks, you want 5 to 6 years of sustained play, and you want like a, a heir to the throne kind of idea, right?
mhm,
Um, I think one team that not a lot of people are talking about are the Giants.
mhm,
The Giants are a quarterback needy team if you
mhm,
look at their situation. I know all the money they've thrown at Danny Dimes. I don't think they're going to roll with Danny Dimes going into next season. I really
mhm,
don't. After seeing Tommy DeVito and the way he was able to execute the offense, that with the same players that Danny Dimes did
mhm,
in a more efficient pattern, um, I think for the Giants, they're looking at this and saying, okay, we need a quarterback talent somehow, some way. And maybe they would go after Justin Fields if they can't get Caleb Williams, and all of a sudden, like Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix are taken off the board, or Drake May are taken off the
mhm,
board, and they like those guys, and they don't know what to do, and they don't like Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, don't want to take them that high. I could see them trading for Justin Fields. I could definitely see that possibility because I think he's better than Daniel Jones with that group of um, weapons they have. I think he's obviously better than Tommy DeVito, but he's a guy that would upgrade that situation. And then now I'm thinking about it, there's two other sleeper teams that when I was talking about heir to the throne that I think apply in this situation, um, and maybe three if I'm including your Denver Broncos, because Denver could make the trade. They could. They
mhm,
absolutely could. Um, because it gives them a year of cap control, and they have the 12th overall pick, so they could.
mhm,
But the two teams I was talking about, and I'll finally get to them, are the Seahawks and the Rams.
mhm,
I think they have old enough quarterbacks where they have good situations. Well, more so the Rams as far as that quarterback development.
mhm,
And Seahawks with a great defensive minded coach that I could see like Justin Fields sitting behind Geno Smith or Matthew Stafford for the year with the hope that he starts within the next year or two.
mhm,
Like I could definitely see that play out. Um, even though I don't think he should be sitting, I could see that happen as well. I can't rule that out at all.
mhm. Yeah, I think Seahawks are a decent team in the running. I think Rams are a bit trickier of a situation. I think with the team with a veteran quarterback already in place, it's kind of hard to trade for a guy like Justin Fields because it's like it's a lot of nuance on like how you value Justin Fields at that point. Because
Mhm.
if you're bringing him to be, your future guy, like, and it's like, are you going to sign him to like a short, cheap deal and hope, but like, if you're bringing him to be your guy, you have 1 year on the contract left, and then you're going to expect to pay him the big bucks, but then it's like you already kind of seen his development, so you have to be 100% sold that like Justin Fields is going to be the guy. He's going to be the
I don't
superstar that
think
you
you've truly
expect.
seen his development though. If you look at the situation, I don't think you've
Mhm.
seen what he can unlock as a passer yet. I really don't. I
Yeah.
think the
Well, I don't
passing
think a lot.
constancy,
Yeah.
like, I think there's still like potential on the table if you for him to become a
Mhm.
Jalen Hurts like quarterback,
Mhm.
or like
Yeah.
the strides Lamar made. Like, look at the strides
Mhm.
Lamar made this season. I think
Mhm.
Justin Fields can definitely do that in an environment that's conducive to him. And he's going to a
Yeah.
situation like Seattle. Like Mike McDonald's been like scheming up against Lamar Jackson all the time in practices. He'd
Mhm.
have an idea of like how Justin Fields operates. Like,
Mhm.
just because he's a defensive coordinator doesn't mean he doesn't
Mhm.
know the opposite side of the ball. Because he does a great job like
Mhm.
understanding how all the elite offenses work. He held that Super Bowl winning Kansas City offense to
Mhm.
17 points.
Yeah.
Like, granted, like it was more like it was kind of like the game flow that led to that, but like there's
Mhm.
enough tape on Mike McDonald being successful against the top offenses where he
Mhm.
knows what the top offenses look like and how to make
Mhm.
and what he would do to scheme against Justin Fields and how he can develop
Mhm.
Justin Fields to counteract that. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And,
I say all this to say um, it's going to be tough. Like to see a scenario like that, it's less likely than the
mhm.
teams who very need a quarterback need it just because of
Mhm.
the nature of how the NFL works.
Mhm.
Owners get very impatient and they'll
Mhm.
want to start that rookie right away without really truly setting them down.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
if I think people look at how Green Bay handled their quarterback situations over the recent years, um, or have a situation like Houston did,
Mhm.
those environments are conducive to what Justin
Yeah.
Fields needs. So I
Yeah.
would not be surprised if it goes to Seattle and Los Angeles. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think about like how much longer of a contract Los Angeles and Seattle holds to their current starting quarterbacks because if they're on contract for at least 2 more years and then all of a sudden you're having to pay Justin Fields like what like how much are you thinking they're going to pay him? Like
I
after
think it's going
this
to be
year.
a 1 or 2 year contract, with
Mhm.
with the promise of like, hey, if you get the starter position, we're gonna increase the rate, or we're gonna increase like the base pay
Yeah, but
for
then
that salary.
but then what stops
So
Fields
I think
from
it'll be a
leaving in
situation like
free
that.
agency to go be a starter immediately after this year? Then because if Stafford's on contract for like 2, 3 more years, hypothetically, Justin, if I
Yeah,
were Justin Fields and I got traded to the Rams, I would not stay and be a backup for 2 more years.
you're right. You're absolutely right. And I think you take a risk. You take a risk by doing that. So if I was
Hmm.
Los Angeles, I first assess the situation and say, Matthew, are you here for 1 more year or 2 more years?
Hmm.
Tell me the truth. And if you're on the fence, if I'm Los Angeles, I'd rather draft a
Hmm.
QB and
Hmm.
prepare for like eventually 2 to 3 down the line, two to
Hmm.
3 years down the line, him starting.
Yeah, and so yeah, I think
If
that's the better
if
route for the
Matthew says
Seahawks.
one
Yep.
year, if Matthew says 1 year, I would go get
Hmm.
Justin Fields because with the
Hmm.
type of coach Sean McVay is and less lead, they
Hmm.
want to win now, and he is the type of player they would target and say,
Hmm.
okay, if, sit behind Matthew Stafford for a year, great passer of the ball, all that.
Hmm.
Up your game passing, learn Sean McVay's system. Next year, you're the
Hmm.
guy. We're gonna pay you like one, and then and
Hmm.
then go in that route. I
Yeah.
agree with you. To have Justin Fields sit behind for 2 years with uncertainty in that situation, I don't think he'd be down for that. I think he's a
Hmm.
proven starter in this league. Um, but it would only in the situation where like, okay,
Hmm.
he sits behind for a year and then starts in a good
Yeah.
system with a Super Bowl winning head coach. I would
Hmm.
take that opportunity because
Yeah.
that's going to help your development and it's going to give you the payday you want that
Hmm.
you haven't received from Chicago yet because of the situation you've been dealt with.
Hmm. Yeah, and so I mean that's kind of why I think he goes towards the route of a team where there's already a starter opening spot. Is kind of like my leaning ideal for him, but I
I
do see the
agree.
philosophy behind like this teams like the Seahawks or the Rams, but just contract issues are really volatile. I think with both those two teams, at least at the quarterback position, in terms of
Yeah.
how long can you keep Justin Fields on a cheap rate until he can naturally flow into the starter position. But yeah,
Yeah. No, 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 that's definitely fair.
yeah,
And
yeah,
um,
yeah.
I'd say this. Like, I think it's also possible too, because if you look at all these quarterback needy teams that maybe at the top of the draft, it'll be like, why do we need Justin Fields when we get cost controlled quarterback play in the rookie deal?
Mhm.
Like for like I mentioned the Giants. The Giants could easily have Jaden Daniels fall to six at the way they're positioned right now. And they could be like, why would I want to trade for Justin Fields, pay for that contract, while also dealing with the Saquon situation
Mhm.
and try to navigate the Danny Dimes situation that they already paid him. When
Mhm.
I could just draft a rookie, reset the clock, kind of let Danny Dimes like slide on out of here, get that money back, and then build the team around that. Like,
Mhm.
so there's a lot of factors in play. I think it's a nuanced situation, um,
Mhm.
but there's a there's at least 8 teams I think that would trade for Justin Fields.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about your former quarterback,
Mhm.
maybe still quarterback. I don't know what's going on in Denver, but um, I assume the situation would follow the Justin Fields situation,
Mhm.
given given the youth of Justin Fields compared to Russell Wilson, and given like what teams would prefer. Like I think
Mhm.
they would prefer Justin Fields, who still has his athleticism yet, with like Russell Wilson, who's an aging player. But what do you think
Mhm.
are good landing spots for him, Russell
Um.
Wilson?
Yeah, it's a tricky situation. I think if he does get released by the Broncos, he he probably signs to a vet minimum because if I'm a GM, like I feel like there's better or just as like there's options in free agency that I think can perform just as well as Russell Wilson from like a player standpoint, for like not a very expensive contract, and so I think there's like it's going to be a really tricky situation where like he could go to a team like the Raiders, like the Patriots. Um, I think the Patriots like fit almost fit the personality kind of, but I don't know because it's like more so than a scheme fit. It almost feels like a personality fit with Russell Wilson because like his brand and his image is really huge, and so like yeah, and like there's a part of me that feels like he could potentially not get signed during the off season, and then during the season a quarterback goes down and a team then signs Russell Wilson to a deal to kind of fill in for said injured quarterback of an already good team. Like
That could
like
definitely happen. Yeah.
I think if he wants like a good career revival type story to go his way, that's probably his best route because I
Mm.
I don't I don't think he wants to risk getting paid to go to a bad team and then stink it up again because that just hurts his legacy. And I know a big like his brand is just him looking good, and so him having another bad season, obviously, I mean, I don't think he's going to want to risk that, and so I think that
Mm.
puts some of these teams like out of the picture for him. But I think that from like if I'm trying to think like Russell Wilson get inside his head, I think waiting the off season, unless I get a crazy deal, waiting the off season until I can get like a cool job for a team with a quarterback that got hurt happens, and then I jump in and kind of like what Joe Flacco did this season,
Yeah.
where he jumped in, he didn't play, he played good enough, to keep his team in games, win a handful of games, and he won't come back player of the year, and I think that it's the safest route for Russell Wilson, and so that's why I don't really have necessarily a specific landing spot for him amongst the teams available, but that's just kind of how I see him going about it, and that is if he does get released from the Denver Broncos, which is seeming more and more like a reality.
I think two teams might fit him best. I think
Hmm.
they're teams that are going to find it difficult to, um, well, the first one's going to be hard to justify. Um, I think like the Commanders. Commanders would be hard to
Hmm.
justify because they have the number 2 overall pick. they could
Mhm.
easily just pick like whichever quarterback falls to them. I'm assuming it's not going to be Caleb Williams. Well, it could be Caleb Williams if the Bears pick Marvin Harrison one. Um,
Mhm.
but I'm assuming the Bears will want to extract as much value as they can from their trade down, and some other team comes up and picks Caleb Williams one.
Mhm.
So, um, in that situation, they're going to get the second best quarterback in the draft, who they think is the second best quarterback in the draft,
Mhm.
and not unlikely to sign Russell Wilson,
Mhm.
because they're probably going to want Howell to still develop and play the backup
Mhm.
role there.
Yeah.
But I definitely think Russell Wilson to the Steelers has some smoke to it
Yeah. I
because
was actually just thinking that when you were talking about teams, I'm like, Steelers might be good, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah, because like they tried journeyman quarterbacks. Like it seems like the quarterback they would try to go for. Um,
Mhm.
like they tried Mitch Trubisky, they tried Mason Rudolph for multiple years, and he played better towards the end of the season. He really did. And then um, Kenny Pickett's not been panning out the way they hoped. I think Russell Wilson. That's a good situation where like they have the talent there, and Russell Wilson can
Mhm.
maximize it, and they have a disciplined head coach that has never had
Mhm.
a losing season. He knows how to get the most out of his players, even with the quarterback play that they've had post Roethlisberger.
Mhm.
So I look at that, and I look at the new offensive coordinators like Arthur Smith. Like
Mhm.
for all he did in Atlanta, if you look at Tennessee, he's a great offensive coordinator. He's just not a good like head coach, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Like I think Najee's going to have a big year. Like Jalen Warren's going to continue to be awesome for that team. Like he's going to utilize his tight ends. So Fryermuth, like he's still going to get used. They have great wide receiver play. Like they just need like a quarterback that's. They don't even need like a quarterback that's like otherworldly. Like
Mhm.
he can function well with Ryan Tannehill. I think he can do wonders with Russell Wilson.
Mhm.
So that's a team of choice for me. Um, could I see him return to Seattle with a new regime change? I can't rule it out, but it would kind of feel weird if he sat behind Geno Smith
Mhm.
after Geno Smith was sitting behind him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think Russell Wilson is gonna seek out to be like a backup straight up, or like I don't think he's gonna want to fight for the starting position either. Is
Yeah.
kind of like what makes it tricky, and so that's why, and that's what continued. So I think the Steelers is a good like fit potentially, and then in addition
I
to
don't know if he
that,
has a choice in the matter though. Like if you look at all the quarterbacks available,
hmm
like I don't think he'll have a choice because they'll
yeah,
be like what's stopping them from treating him like the veteran quarterback in front of the rookie? And if you stink
hmm
up the joint, we're just gonna turn to this.
yeah,
Like
yeah, and so yeah, it's just kind of hoping to find like the safest option while
safest
still
option
signing
at
a
the
bet. Yeah.
time, I definitely think is what he should be targeting. That's for
hmm
sure.
hmm
Like if he wants to go behind in Jacksonville and sit behind Trevor Lawrence, like I'd recommend doing that.
hmm
Like, but if you can't find a starter job, but like prioritize the starting jobs. Like,
hmm
all right, let's talk free agent quarterbacks.
Yeah.
We kind of discussed Russell Wilson um, as a free agent to be given the Broncos situation, but as you scoured the list, you got guys like Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, Jacoby Brissett, um, Mitch Trubisky, Tyrod Taylor, and Baker Mayfield's an unrestricted free agent.
hmm
Um, if you're like a quarterback needy team, which one would you try and pick out if you can't get Justin Fields or Russell Wilson?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Kirk Cousins, I think is the ideal technical option. I think he's still. I still think he goes back with the Minnesota Vikings there. Um, but I think, yeah, no, I think yes. I think outside of him, my favorite guy actually is Gardner Minshew. I think he's supposed to be a free agent. Um,
Yes.
this is
Yep.
also granting, Baker Mayfield likely goes back with the Buccaneers, considering that they released Shaquille Barrett as well today, and so like that's they're probably they're keeping Buccaneers are probably keeping Baker Mayfield. Mike Evans, and then maybe tagging like Anton Winfield or something like that.
Mhm.
Is kind of their main three, you know, guys that they're keeping. But so which leads me to think that Gardner Minshew is probably my favorite quarterback, at least in the current free agent market. Um, Especially just like considering how him as a technical backup last season pretty much like almost got the Colts into the playoffs, and like he had them really competitive throughout the season. It was like what he threw 3,300 yards, 15 touchdowns, and what 9 interceptions in 16 games, which you'd like to see it a little bit higher, but like I think for just kind of the stage that the Colts are at, because I think we both had the Colts not performing that well this season. We didn't like
We
the
had them as
weapons
a
as much,
7-win
and
team, I think, 6 or 7 wins.
yeah, and so I don't think we saw them as a super strong front runner, but he did keep the team competitive, which was nice, especially with like Jonathan Taylor kind of coming in a little bit slow at sometimes. Um, but yeah, so him, he's a guy I really like, and then um, who else? I mean, like Jameis Winston's technically in the mix. Um, he's kind of like a wild card where he's shown that he could kind of, you know, ball out here and there, and so I think if I were him, I would. Well, actually, yeah, like I would think about leaving the Saints and like see if I can get, into another like a more legitimate quarterback competition battle. But I think those are kind of like the two most interesting guys out of Kirk Cousins, uh, that I like at least right now.
Yeah, other than the guys you mentioned, I think Drake Browning is not getting talked about enough.
Mhm.
I think he's a guy like I could see like start for a team like that's just trying to get onboard a rookie, for example.
Mhm.
So like if you draft a guy like Jordan Travis because you can't get any of the top quarterbacks, I could see you taking Jake Browning and
Mhm.
seeing how he pans out. Like
Yeah.
if I'm what's stopping Tennessee from picking scooping up a Jake Browning and having him compete with Will Levis for the job?
Mhm.
That's plausible. Like he can just go about anywhere. Like he can go to New England. Like
Mhm.
and like they could still draft a rookie and have like he can still get some startable games in there. We've seen plenty of
Yeah.
situations where like a free agent quarterback starts for a couple games and then the rookie takes over, and that's usually how that goes. So like
Mhm.
I think he showed a lot of great tape last year. Um, he was really impressive. I think against Kansas City, if I remember, they were playing Kansas City with Jake
Mhm.
Browning. He made some. He had some really great tape. Um, he had a famous one-liner too when facing Minnesota. I think that was awesome to see.
Mhm.
He's definitely a talent quarterback that needed time to develop, and I think he could do some good things. I'm not saying he's going to have top 10 performances, but if the rest of your roster's strong, he's a good guy to have as you try to develop a top 10
Mhm.
QB.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's another guy I just missed. But yeah, I do like Jake Browning. But I feel like yeah, just kind of yeah between Jake Browning, um, Gardner Minshew, maybe Jameis Winston. I feel like are the three main front runners of guys that I think could potentially have starting roles at least
I
some
wouldn't
point
rule
during the
out Drew
season.
Lock either. I wouldn't rule him out because
Mhm.
this is exactly the type of age where like quarterbacks like start to understand their game and understand what they can do, what they can't do.
Mhm.
I'd be willing to take a low contract offer on Drew Lock, see what he
Mhm.
can do in the backup role or like a starter
Yeah.
role for a couple games and
Mhm.
have a plan in place if he doesn't plan out. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to give him 10 million a year like for one
Mhm.
year and then be like, yeah, after 5 games, screw you. I'm going to give him a low
Yeah.
contract offer. But like
Mhm.
the potential Drew Lock could have, like he's a he has a lot of arm talent. He just didn't have everything else you need. And
Mhm.
like if I'm looking at how Geno Smith developed in Seattle, looking at how Drew Lock's been sitting behind Geno Smith all this time, like
Mhm.
I would give a shot on him because he's the type of player like the Tannehill. Like nobody
Mhm.
wants him, but like when one team picks him up and he just happens to start, like suddenly the team just starts clicking. And I could see that kind of career trajectory for Drew Lock in a different place and people be like, how do we miss Drew Lock at all? So
Mm-hmm.
that's like my sleeper pick. I'm not saying he's gonna definitely do some things for a team. I'm just saying
Mm-hmm.
if you're out of options, take a chance on him and rely on the draft. Like throw
Mm-hmm.
multiple darts at the wall. And this is like your low risk move.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys here I think that are solid bridge options. Like you could even throw Tyrod Taylor in as like a semi-bridge
Absolutely.
option here.
Yeah.
He's like I mean in his like couple of games he played for the Giants, he looked pretty nice. It just he got hurt and that kind of just derailed the season again for
Same thing happened to him
which
in
is
the Chargers.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's happened to him so many times, but like um yeah, but I feel like that's kind of most of when I look at guys. And I feel like there's a decent amount of guys that'll probably get signed and be like in circulation as like maybe backups, maybe third string guys like Mason Rudolph, uh, Kyle Allen, uh, who else is in here? Josh
Teddy
Dobbs
Bridgewater.
probably. Teddy Bridgewater's retiring, isn't he?
Oh, right. Yep. Yep.
But
Slow
yeah,
brain
like
on that part.
Tyler,
He's coaching his
yeah,
high school team.
Tyler Huntley, Mitch Trubisky probably still gets a backup thing somewhere just because something. Same with Jacoby Brissett. He probably signs as like a backup. Uh, so
Carson
there's a lot of
Wentz.
guys. Yeah, Carson Wentz. He feels like he's always like a mid-season backup signing though.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I feel like a lot of these guys you'll still see get signed somewhere at some point throughout the season.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think the guys that we mentioned just initially are probably the main focuses, and the
I
fact
didn't
that
mention
Drew
Joe
Lock's in
Flacco
this, yeah.
because I assume like he's gonna go back to the Browns. I don't think the
Hmm.
Browns want to lose him again. He wants to be in
Yeah,
that system. Like
yeah. If
I
anything,
think
he
it's a
does kind of the
foregone
same thing.
conclusion that he's a third string or starter.
Yeah, I think he does kind of a thing where he's like on the practice squad, and then if injury does happen, they might sign him, as a kind of an emergency quarterback. But
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
feel like
All
yeah, I
right.
feel like that's logical. Kind of like what Josh McCown did like forever ago with the Eagles, where he was
Mhm.
on the practice squad, but he was doing his own thing basically. But if he was needed, they could sign him. Yeah, with him being
100%.
39, that seems pretty feasible. But he
Hey, Joe Flacco's the new Tom Brady. I don't want to hear no
is.
smoke.
Yeah, he's in his prime, man.
All right, let's talk about the future. Let's talk
Hmm.
about some excitement. We got NFL draft QBs. Um, I think there's an over under on whether like more than 6 NFL QBs are taken in the first round. I would take that.
Hmm.
I would honestly take that. I'm pulling up the list of rookie NFL QBs right now. But while I'm doing that, who do you think, or I just let's start this more broad. What do you make of this quarterback class?
I think it's really exciting. I think there's a lot of hype, which will lead people to mock draft quarterbacks. I think higher than they will actually go. It kind of like remember, well, it's like the Malik Willis draft or whatever, where there was like mock drafts where he went like sixth overall or something. I think similar things are I think there's a lot of talent in this draft, but I think a lot of that is also happening in this draft, where guys are like jumping like crazy. But I feel like for sure we see three guys go round one, potentially four, maybe five, but I don't think six go in the first round. Just like look, I don't know. Like I look at it and I'm like, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May, I can comfortably say will probably be first round picks. And then I think a lot of it comes down to like how the combine ends up going, and not necessarily like the metrics, but just how like the quarterbacks interview, and that's kind of the stuff that we don't necessarily see, and that'll kind of cause everything to fluctuate a ton. But um,
Yeah, yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. I actually think 6 will be taken in the first round, and
mhm,
I wouldn't be surprised if some team takes a flyer on Jordan Travis, and
mhm,
makes that the 7th pick.
mhm,
But like you mentioned, I think Caleb's a lock for first round. Obviously, he's probably going top 3, if not top 9. Jaden Daniels top 10, you can book it. Um, let's see here. Michael Penix, I think some team's going to take him in the first round. Um,
Mhm.
I could see Drake May getting taken in the first round, but I'm I've been hyping up a lot, and you've been hyping him a lot, like as the season goes on. The more I actually sit down and watch him, though, I'm not I'm not as high on him. I think
Mhm.
there's some work where like processing in the pocket that could
Mhm.
be done. Like it's he's very talented.
Mhm.
He's very talented for sure, but it's a similar case like when we're thinking about Drew Lock, when we're thinking about Zach Wilson, the one issues that plagued them was like processing in the pocket. Now, do I think
Mhm.
Drake May is better than both those guys coming out? I think so. I think he is. But I just think compared to the other available quarterbacks in the draft, I don't think he's top two anymore. I don't. I don't.
Yeah.
I think Jaden Daniels has overtaken him there. Um,
Yeah.
if I'm thinking about, let's see, I listed out like four, so that's four in the first round.
Mhm.
I think JJ McCarthy is going to be that sneaky like mid round, late first round guy
Mhm.
that like he's really hard to like decipher right now.
Mhm.
Like as far as like where does he fit among the quarterbacks, but I think some team's gonna grab him one because they don't want him to fall any further and risk losing him.
Mhm.
And I think Bo Nix is among like top four, top five quarterbacks that will be taken. So
Mhm.
those are my six that I'm confident will go in the first round. I don't know how many will go in the top 10. Could be three, it could be five. No idea.
Mhm.
But I would say six go in the first round.
Yeah. If five of these guys go in the top 10, my mind will be blown. I'll like,
It's gonna be scarcity. It's gonna be PS scare tactics. Like people are gonna
yeah.
try and trade up and
Well,
grab them.
yeah. But it's like it's funny because like in a shallow quarterback class, like I feel like that's when you deal with the scarcity rather than now when you have six guys that we think that are like decent, and then plus you got guys like Jordan
Oh no,
Travis, you guys,
I'm talking about just like not. So when I say scarcity, I mean like the value of the position and like the value of the pick you
yeah,
have. Like if you're not top 10, you're trying your hardest to trade up and get them. Like
hmm
I'm
yeah,
saying this, like if it's five taken in the top 10, I don't think you're going to see the same 10 teams that are currently projected to
hmm
pick at top 10. I think that's going to
yeah,
be a lot of as a result of trade ups, people
hmm
trading up to grab the quarterback because they're not going to like
yeah,
want to sit and wait on the hype of the
uh
talent
huh,
that they
yeah,
deem as the talent.
uh
So
huh,
for that reason, I could see it. I would be mind blown too because then it's like, oh shoot, we thought the 2022 or 2020 class of quarterbacks was really good.
hmm
Oh no, oh no. A lot of teams
yeah,
think like four of these guys are going to be like hits, round one hits.
yeah. I just think that again, I think it's there's like a very big case of overhype of all these quarterbacks, where
Mm.
like I think like JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix are solid day two guys. Michael Penix, I could see being he's like he's a big wild card to me just with the fact that like I think had he not had the injuries, I'd consider him as a top 10 guy, but because of just like the injury risk factor that's pretty unique to him, I kind of have him it makes it he's confuses me in terms of like where I really want to have him like placed here. Um, but yeah, like and then I feel like and then yeah, like McCarthy and Knicks are just kind of like they feel more projecty to me. Even like Drake May, you could argue is kind of a more of a project quarterback, but he also is like a lot younger in comparison to like some of these other guys that we're seeing here. So like it's easy to like see why Drake May would go higher just because you have a lot more like I guess room to work with him just because he
Yeah.
is he is younger. He's only like a
You
sophomore or
could
whatever,
control the
but
contract cycles after his rookie year. That makes a lot of
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah. Whereas you see like Bo Nix and Michael Penix, like after their first contract, what they're going to be like 28 years old, and you're like, you have a lot less leeway, and so that's what makes me think that. maybe those two guys go even like early second round, which I wouldn't, which isn't a knock on them per se. It's just like there's a lot of quarterbacks here, and so it's like if you're not getting, let's say Williams or Daniels, like how much disparity do you have between May, McCarthy, Penix, and Nix? And he's like, how much are you willing to gamble that? Oh well, one of those four will fall to me later in the first round or even high in the high second that I will fall, or I can trade up to in the high second to get rather than trading up top 10 to get a guy like JJ McCarthy or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't have an answer because as you
Mm-hmm.
explain it, it makes sense. One thing with
Mm-hmm.
Penix that I think is unique to his age is that I want to shy away from taking him because it's a low risk move,
Mm-hmm.
even if you're picking top 10. Because what, he's 26 or 27 right now?
I can look it
Like,
up.
yeah, like regardless of what the exact number is, it could be 25. Um,
He's 23.
oh, he's 23.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean,
It's
I'm willing to take that.
Bo Nix is the 24-year-old.
Okay. I'm willing to take those guys though,
Mm-hmm.
because like you have to give maybe one contract extension to either of them after after their rookie deal if it works out, and then like all of a sudden you're looking at 32, 33-year-old quarterback, um,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like you don't have to worry about it as much. Like you
Mm-hmm.
just have to pay the guy well, obviously wants on his rookie contract and then wants
Mm-hmm.
an extension, and then you could start to plan for the next guy. Like if you're a stable franchise. Now I realize like
Mm-hmm.
franchises aren't operated where they have the same regime for 8 to 10 years. That's really rare.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I want to shy away from the older guys if they can produce right away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that what's unique about the situation with the COVID pandemic and then the guys like
Mm-hmm.
having their fifth or sixth year of eligibility, like that I think is more advantageous because they're spending time like honing
Mm-hmm.
their craft. When I watch Penix, he looks like a professional quarterback to me, like the
Mm-hmm.
way he plays. Granted, the wild card is the injury. It is the injury.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk
Yeah.
about the free agent quarterback landscape, this is why you do a move like this
Mm-hmm.
because you'll grab a guy like Penix, knowing that you have a free agent in Jake Browning, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe you have Russell Wilson to the Steelers, but you still draft Penix.
Mm-hmm.
This is the types of things you have to make a plan in your quarterback depth chart to account for what's the worst
Mm-hmm.
case scenario that happens with drafting this guy. If the worst case scenario is injury,
Mm-hmm.
plan for it. Plan that it's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. You don't wish it on any players, but just look at what happened to the Jets after Aaron Rodgers went down
Mm-hmm.
in the first
Yeah.
four plays of the game. They had
Uh-huh.
no plan after that and made no adjustments to do. As a
Mm-hmm.
franchise, you don't want to be in that situation. So I want to shy
Yeah.
away from taking Penix and Knicks because I see their
Mm-hmm.
talent and I'm like, okay, that's a round one quarterback compared to what we saw with Kenny Pickett's class.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a
And it's
tough
like,
argument.
yeah, it was like objectively, like Penix might be from like just a pure quarterback ability standpoint. He might be one of my favorite guys in this class. But then like age really isn't too much of a factor for me either. But it really is just the injury bit, and so that's what keeps me from wanting to draft him so high. Just because it's like I could see him of all the quarterbacks in this class right now having the best rookie season. Like I think he's my technical candidate. I think for offensive rookie of the year if he stays healthy all season. Um, but then it
Wow.
is if he stays
Wow.
if he stays healthy all season because I think from a technical standpoint he's a really great passer. I think he reads the field pretty well, and that's only going to get better, as he develops more as a quarterback. And then like I also think that he isn't going to be taken top 10, which means that there's a chance that he gets drafted to a slightly better team which has more pieces around him. So it's like all
Mm.
those kind of attributes, plus the fact that I really love him as a passer, leads me to believe that he can have the strongest season of the bunch. It just, again, the injuries, and it's like one-off injuries don't really worry me either. It's just the fact that it's consistent. He's consistently had
It's
similar
happened for
injuries.
multiple seasons. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, had like if Caleb Williams, he tears his ACL like this season. I'm not really sweating it. I don't sweat that at all. But Michael Penix rookie year, if he tore his ACL, I'd be like, do I draft a quarterback next season? It's like it's kind of just a scary thing. And like even like Anthony Richardson, he got hurt. I'm not sweating it. Like sure, his development is kind of like has I have question marks about how much he's been able to develop as a passer, but from like his availability standpoint, I have no questions about that. But then yeah, it's Penix. So that's why Penix is such a wild card for me. Where I could envision a team being 100% sold on him, taking him top 10, but also I could see teams just being too scared of his injuries because we've seen that in the past with other players with like injury history that go um, just significantly later than like what their actual values listed at. And so I could see him being taken as late as like a mid third round pick, which is weird to say about a quarterback. Like, a guy could go top 10 or he could go third round. And I think that is a thing. And that's just from how I think teams might be viewing him.
I don't know about mid third round pick. I'm
Mhm,
if I'm I just think I think the way the position has evolved is like it's the have or the have nots. Like at
mhm,
quarterback. You either have that stud at quarterback or you don't. And
mhm,
after looking at how much Cleveland invests in Deshaun Watson, I don't think teams are willing to take the risk of having Penix slide past the mid first round because you're gonna get that draft day injury guy who like slid so far down and people don't know why. You saw with like Jalen Carter. Now, granted, who knows about the Jalen Carter maturity issues that's yet to pan out. He just got drafted, right? But you saw
mhm,
how he was projected to be the number one pick last year, and nobody wanted him until pick like
mhm,
9 or 10. You know, so
mhm,
you have like all these issues that come up and like the lying about like draft prospects and their situations, whatnot, it's only
mhm,
just begun. So
mhm.
Corstian's logic is very sound here. Um, as
Yeah.
much as I would love to talk about the round one quarterbacks, or you had something, go on. Go on.
Yeah, no, and so it's like him being even like I don't envision him getting taken in the third. I'm saying like at latest.
It's a
That's like a
possibility.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, just with because I could imagine teams valuing or like evaluating him and valuing his injury risk so much that like he does fall down the board to that extent. But I think that most teams do see how great of a passer he is and how just like efficient of a quarterback he is that he definitely gets taken a lot higher than that. But
I don't think he's getting
and then
past Pittsburgh.
yeah, and then just because he gets taken potentially later doesn't necessarily doesn't show me knocking him as like being a successful quarterback. He could get taken third round for all I care, and I still think that he's a candidate for offensive rookie of the year. Um, just because that's how confident I am in his like actual quarterback playing ability.
Mm.
It's kind of this. It's the similarities of like Dak Prescott. You can talk about Brock Purdy, where like there's issues one way or another, but like just like like draft position doesn't really mean that you can't be good. And so just because he falls and just because I can envision him falling doesn't mean that I think lesser of his abilities. It really is just the injuries that
Mm.
frighten me. And so that's why my range is so wide. Is I easily could see teams valuing him as like even a top five guy, but then also I could see another team valuing him as like a third round pick at best, just because again, or at worst, because again, just the concerns that you have with him, which is all completely valid. But I'm just thinking from like a scouting standpoint where you know,
Let me
the
ask you
range is
this:
on.
where would you take Jordan Travis then?
Jordan Travis. I don't know. Like, um, so I think.
Like right
Go ahead.
now, right now, Jordan Travis is projected to be late day three. So like about like
Hmm.
fourth round or later.
Hmm. Yeah,
Do you think that's accurate or?
I think that's yeah, fourth round. I think I'm okay with him going there. I think, and then like if he has an insane combine, I could see him, bumping up into the third round as well. But I don't know.
That might be tough
Like it.
because he's coming off a injury.
Yeah, and so I mean with the combine, it's more so like interviewing that he does with like GMs and whatnot. Because
Mm.
like that like him actually performing at the combine does like a little bit for draft stock, especially at the quarterback position. But like, I think a big part is seeing kind of like the mental aspects of each quarterback at the combine, because all these quarterbacks are talking with like all of the GMs, and just kind of talking with different coaches as well. And so I think this is a really big part of like just kind of feeling out how maybe like the quarterback meshes with the coach, like the coaching staff. And so again, like hypothetically, Jordan Travis, he could be like, for I don't know, like let's say like the Jets or something. He's like the most personable thing. Like Robert Saleh, he loves him to no extent. Like, and then like that could be a situation where we may take this guy in the third round just because we think he has the right personality for the Jets. And then he has a great opportunity to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for a season or two, and it's not going to put pressure on Aaron Rodgers because it's still a third round pick. But then again, I could also see him dropping fifth, sixth round just because it
Scared
just
off of injury.
yeah,
Yeah.
So that's what I think happens with Penix as well. Is like people know his passing ability, which has me saying like he could go top 10. And then having good interviews, good combine, just or pro day. I don't remember if he's like officially performing at the combine or not, because I know a lot of dropped out of that. But that this kind of personality meshing will, I think, really dictate how a lot of these quarterbacks go, especially the guys who I think are fringe dudes like JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, and Bo Nix, where great like personality meshes push them into the first round, whereas maybe the teams that are looking for quarterbacks that in this range don't necessarily like the personality fits and are thinking I could probably get this guy in the second round, and I think I'm okay if I miss out on these guys potentially.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Okay.
Hmm.
So let's say the price for quarterback is too steep for some teams. They don't
Hmm.
need one right away. Um, like they don't want to pay one in round one or round two
Hmm.
because just like the quarterbacks, the receiving class is loaded. I think there's about
Hmm.
20 to 24 receivers in this class
Hmm.
that I could see being picked in the top 100, and I wouldn't bat an eye.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
class is really, really like Lad McConkey. Like
Hmm.
he was like a really great player for Georgia last year,
Hmm.
like one of the best receivers in college football. He's projected to go in the second top of the second round,
Hmm.
and if he goes to the Chiefs, it's like, yeah, that's okay. Everybody, watch out. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, so like the receiving class is loaded.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel
Let's say
like
teams want to take
yeah.
those receivers in the first 2 rounds,
Hmm.
and they just want to pan on a late round QB, even later than Jordan Travis or Michael Penix. Who are
Hmm.
those guys you think they should target?
um, let's see. I think yeah, I mean like I don't like it, but like I know Spencer Rattler's going to be in this conversation. Um, like I think again, it's like you draft him as like a pure project guy, which I think is valid if you know that if you're drafting him in like the sixth round as a project, I think that's fine. Sam Hartman is like a fifth round guy. I wouldn't be opposed to. Um, where I see like I don't know. Like again, I think he is like a good personality guy, and some I think he exhibits good like leadership qualities, which I think keeps him kind of uppish in like as in he goes in the fifth round type guy. But like off the top of my head, those are just kind of like two guys that I envision uh being all right.
Hmm. There's one guy I would keep an eye on, other than the guys
Mhm.
I mentioned. Those are great guys. Austin Reed. Austin
Mhm.
Reed out of Western Kentucky. I think he's a sneaky addition. If I'm a team like San Francisco that wants to just draft a guy, sit him behind um, Brock Purdy, and something happens to Brock Purdy, and you need a guy just to execute the system, you got your guy in
Mhm.
Austin Reed. I think he can be a surprising quarterback that not a lot of people think about. Um,
Mhm.
and it's just going to be like, who the heck is this kid out of Western Kentucky? He followed under Bailey Zappi's tutelage, and Bailey Zappi had a great career at Western Kentucky. I think it's a scheme thing with him, but like he can go to the Rams. Like we were talking about, like Justin Fields sitting behind Matthew Stafford. What if a guy like Austin Reed sits behind Matthew Stafford?
Mm-hmm.
He could go to the Vikings. That's a great system fit for him. He could go to the Jaguars. Great system fit for him. He could go
Mm-hmm.
to the Colts. Another great system for him. If they don't want to stick on with Gardner Minshew, I think the Colts might
Mm-hmm.
be my favorite place for him to go to
Mm-hmm.
because we know what Shane Steichen can do,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe the Chargers behind Justin Herbert. Like he's the perfect guy to have as your back quarterback, be something plus, and um, that's a guy I would not um, just ignore. He's a sleeper addition that I
Mm-hmm.
think is going to surprise people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah, but yeah, because I think hmm, I don't know.
I've seen
This would be
Pratt. I
yeah.
haven't watched Pratt. I haven't watched Pratt at all. And I've seen a
Yeah.
little bit of Austin Reed, but from what I've seen, he looks like if you just
Mm-hmm.
need a guy to execute the system, he's you got you got somebody that could do that, and he has a huge arm. So like I
Mm-hmm.
think I think it's just more of like people are logo scouting and seeing that, oh, I think people are logo scouting a lot with these teams because if you know like Washington and Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
they were like top 7 seeds like consistently throughout the season. And
Mm-hmm.
like Bo Nix and Michael Penix. There's no shock there in round one. Whereas Western Kentucky, we're like
Yeah.
nobody's ever heard of it. So like
Mm-hmm.
that's granted that guy's gonna be like fourth round or lower. So
Yeah.
um that's why I say look at a talent, not necessarily the logo of the helmet,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see that he has some things to offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think yeah, Michael Pratt's like just another interesting guy. Um, again, I think he definitely isn't like a day one ready type guy as well. Where like
Oh, none of these guys are. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean like, bro, I think he could like my career projection for Pratt at least is like fringe starter, but like most likely career backup, which I still think is valid. And like a guy like that, you could still take in the fifth round as well. Um, or kind of like I don't know, kind of weird connection, but like Davis Mills, where it's like he wasn't really ever meant to be like a starter, but like he could kind of like fill in like halfway decent, like put up good numbers, and I think because I think like one of Pratt's strengths is just like he's fairly accurate as a passer. It just he has just on top of that he has a decent amount of development to go through, which um is obviously why I think he's like a day three type guy. But yeah, no, I think this is a really fun draft class. I mean we've talked about it a ton, but
Yeah, no, we haven't talked about Joe Milton out of Tennessee.
yeah,
Like he has a lot of hype, just like Malik
hmm
Willis. I think there's one location like I think that's has to be like other than like the system quarterback stuff we've talked
hmm
about. Like the one thing the one environment he needs to go to. If not, he could also go. We haven't even mentioned Miami. Like
hmm
Miami is a great fit for anybody. Um,
yeah,
if he goes to Baltimore and learns behind Lamar Jackson and that offense that just became recently passing offense and works on a couple things,
hmm
he's like a project. But like he's like a
hmm
Malik Willis, like Herndon Hooker.
hmm
Like
hmm
potential is there, but like you need to rein it in a little bit. So
hmm
we were going to talk about like a fun topic. I don't know, Corstian, if you have time to talk about it. If you do,
yeah.
we
No,
can jump into it.
yeah, I think I gotta head out soon. My roommates are wanting to go to the gym in a couple of minutes, so
Okay, sweet.
uh,
It's
yeah,
priorities.
I have to head out. But
So,
yeah,
no worries. We can end off there. I also got something coming up in about half an
okay.
hour as well. So, um, that'll do it for us. Thank you guys for tuning in.
hmm
Um, hope you enjoyed our quarterback show. There's going to be a lot of updates to this because news travels fast along in the NFL.
hmm
So, like 2 weeks from now, this might be irrelevant because like
yeah.
Justin Fields stays in Chicago.
hmm
The Bears draft Caleb Williams and they have Caleb Williams and Justin Fields just sitting there competing because that's what they could do. It's the Bears. Like
hmm
I'm a fan, and they do odd stuff, but like I don't think that will happen. But regardless, thank
hmm
you guys for watching. You can follow us on our Instagram page at amon.a.mission. So right there, yep. took us a while to both get it. You could also subscribe to our YouTube channel and comment, give us a like. Let us know what we are doing well, what we need improvements on, and we will see you next.
Yep. Peace out.
Peace, guys.